Welcome in Ravens flock. This is Jordan with Ravens Flash Report. And if you've been paying any attention to the Ravens this season, and in particular over the last month and a half, you won't be shocked to hear that Lamar Jackson is once again the frontrunner for the Most Valuable Player award. Listening to the national pundits and media outlets, you'll see that they've seesawed over Lamar's candidacy for the award all year, but most of the naysayers have finally fallen in line over the past few weeks, given how dominant the Ravens' offense has been and who they've beaten recently with Lamar under center. The battle between performance and stats has been a contentious one this season, as there's no clear favorite when it comes to which QB has dominated the stat sheet, or which skill player, if any, has set the bar high enough to even be considered over a quarterback at all. As is common when the playoffs are on the horizon and many teams are done with the 2023 season, a lot of people's focus turned to really digging in on who they believe deserves the highest individual achievement in football, and I'm no different. So let's get to it. So we're going to start by looking at each of the candidates according to where Vegas currently has their odds winning the award and where they're ranked. This is being recorded between the end of the regular season but before wildcard weekend for context. Going from least likely to most likely, they are Tyreek Hill at 6 at plus 10,000, Christian McCaffrey at 5 at 5th for 4,000, Josh Allen 4th, 3,000, Brock Purdy in 3rd, 2,500, Dak Prescott at 1,800 for 2nd, and Lamar at negative 10,000. So yeah, it's kind of a one-horse race really at this point, but it's kind of fun to speculate and elaborate on these topics, especially since the Ravens don't have a game this weekend. So let's just get this out of the way first and go over Hill and McCaffrey's case and how it's fairly unrealistic that either of these two, no matter how good they've been, will win the award this year. First things first, only 3 non-quarterbacks have won the MVP award in the last 20 years, and they were all running backs. Those being Shawn Alexander in 2005, LaDainian Tomlinson in 2006, and Adrien Peterson in 2012. In 2005 and 2006, both Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, who were currently the top contenders for the award consistently around that time frame, had statistically down seasons. In the 12 seasons from 2003 to 2014, the MVP distribution was such. Peyton Manning had 5, Tom Brady 2, Aaron Rodgers had 2. So basically, over those 12 seasons, the award was won by one of these 3 players, 75% of the time. In 2005, Shawn Alexander not only led the league in rushing attempts with 370, he also led in yardage at 1,880. Rushing touchdowns with 27 and averaged 117.5 yards on the ground per game. Tomlinson had similar numbers the following year with 1,815 yards on 348 carries and 28 touchdowns. He's also averaged over 100 yards per game with 113.4. But LT also caught 56 passes for 508 yards and an additional 3 touchdowns, giving him 2,323 yards from scrimmage and 31 total touchdowns, which is still the all-time record. In 2012, Adrien Peterson ran for 2,097 yards, falling short of Eric Dickerson's record by a mere 8 yards. Dickerson, who set the record in 1984, didn't even win the MVP award that season. That went to Dan Marino. Peterson finished with 2,314 yards from scrimmage and averaged 131.1 yards per game on the ground. These guys were not only the best players on their teams, they were also unstoppable when their teams needed them. I remember watching Adrien Peterson and being amazed when everyone, including the opposing defense, knew he was getting the ball and he'd still pick up the first down or break off a big run. These running backs weren't just great, they were all-time greats. And that's often the reason their teams were relevant. While Christian McCaffrey is having a good season, a very good season, and is for sure the best running back this season, we have just mentioned 3 running backs who literally had to rewrite history books in order to win the award, and even in Eric Dickerson's case, he lost to a QB anyway. McCaffrey has 1,459 rushing yards, 14 rushing touchdowns, 2,023 total yards from scrimmage, and a total touchdown count of 21. His yardage per game is also impressive, but at 91.2, it doesn't even come close to the standard needed. As far as Tyreek Hill's case, I'm going to put it bluntly. He has less receptions, receiving yards, touchdowns, yards per game, and total scrimmage yards than Cooper Kupp did in 2021, and even he didn't win the award that year. Aaron Rodgers did. Also, a wide receiver has never won the award, so Tyreek winning it this year and breaking that barrier is not going to happen. Sorry. So now let's get into the QBs who, according to Vegas, have a legitimate shot at the MVP runner-up. Starting with Josh Allen, who has 4,306 passing yards in his last 4 seasons, all being over 4,200. So I will say he is consistent, but with 29 passing touchdowns to 18 interceptions, it's not a great ratio in all honesty. The most impressive stat for me from Allen is his rushing stats. He averages only 30.8 yards per game on the ground, but with 524 yards and 15 rushing touchdowns, which, by the way, is more than the entire Bengals team. You can see what he was used for in that regard. Overall, with the Bills winning 6 of their final 7 games and securing the second overall seed in the AFC, it's no wonder he's being considered a candidate for the award. However, if you were to look at Allen's numbers over that stretch, we'll see a little bit of a different picture that's painted. 60.1% completions, 10 passing touchdowns, and 7 interceptions, 243 yards per game, and a passer rating of 86.6. Now, stats and stats alone, I don't believe make up the entire argument. And as a Lamar fan, we understand that we can spin the numbers to our favor. Allen also did rush for 8 touchdowns over the last 7 games, which is crazy, and he racked up 278 yards on 63 attempts, which tells me that in games where his arm wasn't good enough, he used his legs to get wins that they needed. And for that, I give him huge props. As a Lamar's fan, one of the biggest stats we all come back to is wins, and Josh Allen led his team from a 5-5 dead in the water disappointment to hosting a playoff game as a second seed. That's an MVP candidate willing and pushing his team over the top at the end of a season. Now, Brock Purdy is a great story, but it's more than that, because he's been humble, gracious, and quietly leading and commanding the best team in the NFC to a 12-4 record in a division that saw the Rams make a huge push at the end to get to 10 wins and a spot in the playoffs, and a 9-8 Seahawks team that still had a chance to make the postseason even into the fourth quarter of Week 18. Numbers-wise, Brock has some seriously impressive stats, because while he has 26 less passing yards than Allen and 236 less than Dak at the end of the season, he didn't even play in Week 18. And if he had, he's averaging 251 passing yards per game, so he would have had more than both of them. Brock also has good passing yards, but more impressive to me was his accuracy, 69.4%, and his efficiency passing the ball. Brock threw 135 less passes than Allen and 146 less than Dak, while throwing 2 more touchdowns than Allen and only 5 less than Dak, for a league-leading 7% touchdown rate. But his touchdown percentage wasn't the only passing stat that Purdy led the league in. He also was 9.6 yards per attempt, a QBR rating of 72.8, and a ridiculous 113 passer rating, which he achieved without ever having a single perfect passer rating to help boost his overall average. He's just really good at slinging the ball around the whole season. Now, does it help throwing to the 4 horsemen of the Bay Area, being Samuels, Ayuk, Kittle, and McCaffrey? I'm sure it does, but I think we'd all agree it matters who is throwing the ball to. Just ask Devontae Adams or Garrett Wilson. All of this for a guy who's in his sophomore season and starting last year third on the depth chart, only to be thrust into the spotlight due to injuries to the guys ahead of him, and do so well that they literally trade the guys ahead of you at the end of the season. The fact that Purdy is built so well off his rookie season and shown immense poise and maturity speaks to good coaching for sure, but also high quality, high character, and nerve, as we've seen him have no stage too big yet for Mr. Relevant. Now, Dak has made both a great case to be MVP and also given everyone else a reason to vote against him. He leads the league in completions at 410, as well as passing touchdowns at 36, while holding a completion percentage even higher than Purdy's at 69.5. Well, as I said, he has thrown 146 more passes than him as well. So, Dak is the perfect example of why the award is not and should not be a stat-driven award only. While he does have a 4-1 touchdown to interception ratio, which is fine, he struggled all season to beat good teams, which left all arguments for his candidacy for MVP dead on arrival in my opinion. Dallas didn't beat a team over 500 until Week 14, when they defeated the Eagles to split with them. After that, they did manage to beat the Detroit Lions in the Week 17, which was a bit of a controversial penalty, but it's still in the books as the win. I'm not saying that Dak had a bad season either. He has a 105.9 passer rating on the season, which is the best of his career, and he led his team to a 12-5 record along with the NFC East division title. It's not too shabby. The problem with his MVP case is in those 5 losses, he did not inspire a lot of confidence. So Dak's abilities and Dallas's abilities to face adversity from a good opponent is left in question. In Week 3, he had a 16-28 loss to an 0-2 Cardinals team led by Josh Dobbs. Week 5, 10-42 beatdown by the 49ers. In Week 9, a 23-28 loss to the Eagles. Week 15, another beatdown, this time by the Bills, to the tune of 10-31. and in Week 16 a 20-22 loss to the Miami Dolphins. Through these 5 losses, Dak had a passer rating of 82, which might not say as much in a loss. You would expect to see a bad performance because, you lost. Against teams who were 500 or worse, his passer rating is 111.7. But the real problem is that against teams over 500, his passer rating drops to 89.2, which isn't horrible, but not being horrible is not a reason to be MVP. Lamar Jackson will win this year's Most Valuable Player award, and it won't be because he has the best stats in the world. With 3,678 passing yards being a career high for him this year, it's still over 800 yards less than Dak. His completion percentage is also a career high at 67.2, which is still 2.2% lower than Purdy's. He also has 5 rushing touchdowns, which is only a third of what Josh Allen did. So after all this, why should Lamar win MVP? Well, for starters, he's 13-3, which beats everyone else on this list. He also only has 7 interceptions, which is 2 less than Dak, 4 less than Purdy, and 11 less than Allen. The difference between Lamar and Allen's interception amount is literally Purdy's interception amount. Allen averages 7.4 yards per attempt, Dak is at 7.7, while Lamar is at 8, so he's also efficient. Lamar also has a lower passing yards per game at 229.9, but that's due to the other element of his game that simply no one else has, his legs. And while Josh Allen does run the ball, he does not run it like Lamar does. Lamar averages 5.5 yards per carry, which is better than Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, and Raheem Mostert. It's the best in the league. The Ravens as a team are number 1 in rushing yards at 2,661, and guess who leads the team? Lamar has 821 yards on the ground this season, and he's averaging 51.3 yards per game. These numbers are as statistically relevant as they were for Josh Allen when looking at his rushing touchdown component. Running the ball and specifically scrambling is so intrinsically a part of Lamar's game, it cannot be completely separated. So, with that factor included, let's take a look at everybody's yards per game. Purdy's passing yards at 251, Dak at 265, Allen at 253, and Lamar at 229. Add in those rushing numbers and you get Purdy at 255, Dak at 279, Allen at 284, and Lamar at 281. Lamar and the Ravens had a late bye, and so he only played in 4 of the final 5 games as the number 1 seed was locked up before Week 18. So let's take a look at the final 6 games of the season to see just how well Lamar finished the season in the final stretch. Week 11, 34-20 win over the Bengals. Week 12, 20-10 over the Chargers. Week 14, 37-31 over the Rams. Week 15, 23-7 over the Jags, 33-19 over the 49ers, and Week 17, 56-19 over the Dolphins. Over this stretch, we're going to take a look at his numbers in the same fashion we did for Josh Allen. He had a 63.8% completion percentage, 14 passing touchdowns to 2 interceptions, 250.1 passing yards per game, and a 106.2 passer rating. While he didn't have rushing touchdowns during this time frame, he did add 340 rushing yards on 56 attempts for an average of 6 yards per carry and 48.5 yards per game. But let's see how Lamar did when facing teams above or below 500 like we did with Dak, and compare apples to apples. Now, the only difference here is that Dak faced only 6 teams over 500 and Lamar faced 10. So let's look and see if that has an effect. Just to refresh your memory, Dak versus winning teams went 2-4 with an 89.2 passer rating. Lamar went 8-2 with a passer rating of 108.3. So let's sum this up, shall we? Lamar performed better than Dak against better teams. Lamar outperforms Josh Allen in several statistical areas, especially when running the ball and making better decisions when passing the ball. He also beats Purdy as well as McCaffrey and Hill in one-on-one competition. So, is there anything I missed? Now, like I said at the beginning, Lamar winning the MVP is almost a guarantee at this point, so this is simply my attempt to be as objective towards the numbers as well as performances against high-level competition by the candidates. I have the utmost respect for all of the QBs on this list, and McCaffrey is probably one of my favorite players in the league that's not on the Ravens, so in no way is this intended to come off as a slight to any player I've mentioned. They are all insanely talented, or I wouldn't even be talking about them in this video. Dak is going to continue to have a great career. Allen has already proven many of his own doubters wrong about his flaws entering the league, And Purdy seems to be the answer for the 49ers they didn't even expect to find. So good for them. I look forward to seeing more of these teams matching up against the Ravens in the future or even in this upcoming postseason. Thank you all for checking out the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a like and consider subscribing for more. I'm looking forward to a lot of good football this wildcard weekend and to finding out who the Ravens will be playing in the divisional round. Until then, as always, stay safe out there and go Ravens.